Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 236 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. Today, we're talking about why your consulting lead generation isn't working. This is very important. You might not want to think about this, but it's so important to be thinking about this because lead generation is at the heart of your business and the heart of your success. So I want to really dive into and pick apart why your lead generation isn't working. And very likely it's not the reason why you think it is, which is really good. We need to figure out the reason so you can address it and create a healthy lead generation process for yourself. So that's why we're here today. I'm excited to talk with you about this. Let's dive into these root causes. Before we do, a quick announcement. You may have heard this last week on the podcast, but if you haven't yet listened to that episode, I want to share a huge milestone here at Melisa Liberman Coaching, and that is that the Growth Atlas products are now live on Amazon. So if you've been following, I have been working for the last year on building out physical product tools that go along with so much of what I share here on the podcast and the work that I do with my coaching clients. And they're now live on Amazon. So you can go find them if you search on Amazon the term Growth Atlas. You should see all three products and you can check them out. There's a quarterly business planner. So that's perfect. It's here right in time for Q4. I was hoping it would be here for Q1, but that's a topic for a different day. They're now here and available for Q4. So that'll be an amazing thing to have. If you love physical products like I do, you can go grab your quarterly business planner to set yourself up for success in Q4. And then there's also a business brain journal. It's a 100-day business brain journal that helps you with a lot of the mindset that we talk about here on the podcast. And you can go grab that and get started and have it done by the end of the year because it's 100 days. And then finally, a project map, which is a desk pad that helps you to sketch out project plans, which is perfect for things like lead generation. If you want to start building out a more solid lead generation strategy like we're talking about today, that's a fun way to do it too. So anyway, those are all on Amazon. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you do buy them and want to provide some feedback on Amazon itself, that would be phenomenal. That helps more people to find those products. So anyway, just a slight personal update here, a business update, personal update, and now we'll dive into today's topic. So I'll give you the agenda, and then we're going to go into each one of these agenda items. So first, we're going to talk about why consultants think their lead gen isn't working for them. You may hear some things that sound really familiar to you. I think it's really important to talk about the most commonly thought root causes, because at the end of the day, if you're working to solve against the wrong root cause, you're not going to ultimately create a solution, fix the problem essentially, right? If we're trying to solve a problem and we don't really know what the actual root cause is, then we're not solving for the right thing. So I really want to highlight this for you because it's really important. So why consultants think that lead gen isn't working for them, and you can see if you're thinking any of these things too. Then we're going to talk about the 4 actual root causes. So if it's not what you're thinking, what is it instead? And then we're going to break down those 4 root causes. What is each one of them? What are the mistakes that you make when you're in this particular root cause? And then how to address it. And then finally, we'll talk about 2 very specific next steps to put this episode into action. Stay tuned to that very end because I have 2 really exciting things for you. One, which is a very new thing two actually new things I've created. One I told you about last week on the episode, and today there's actually another one that I'm really excited about. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm excited to share it with you. So you can stay tuned to that. Okay, so let's dive in. What are the 4 most common reasons that I hear in talking to independent consultants every single day? That's what I do all day. And this is what I hear so often. When I ask, why don't you think your lead generation is working? It usually boils down, almost always boils down to these four reasons. Number one, I don't have enough time. It might also sound like I'm not consistent. Number two, I'm not good at marketing and selling, kind of like innately, no one says I'm not genetically good at, it's because of my genes. But a lot of the way we frame that in our mind is that, I'm just not innately good at marketing and selling. Some people are born with this skill set, it seems. I think one of my children has been born with this. He's constantly selling me on things, but most of us aren't. And it's a skill that we build. So that's the second reason I hear most often is it's almost as if we don't have that ability genetically and therefore, we'll never have it. Third reason, it's hard to time the leads to the capacity, right? Availability. So, in other words, I don't need a project right now. I'm fully utilized. My contract ends at the end of the year. And so I need to not start generating leads until it's closer to the end of that contract. I often hear that. You may be thinking that. You might say to yourself, I know that I need to be having a more consistent lead generation process, regardless of how much capacity I have. But then you don't actually follow through because you are thinking to yourself, I don't really need these leads right now because I can't take on another client. That's so common to hear from consultants. And then finally, the truth is, you don't like it. You don't like it. You don't like marketing and selling. You would rather be working with clients and delivering your consulting work, right? Sometimes we don't say that out loud, but it's the truth. And so these are the four most common reasons that I hear why your consulting lead generation isn't working. But these are not the actual root causes of why your consulting lead generation isn't working. You do have enough time. You can get good at marketing and selling. You can figure out a way to manage your lead generation process, even if you don't have capacity right now. And you actually can learn to like it. You might not learn to love it. You might not choose to love it, but you can definitely learn to like it in a way that doesn't make it such a uphill battle every time that you need to think about working on lead gen. If those are not the four root causes, the actual root causes of why your lead generation isn't working, let's talk about what they actually are. And I'll just break it down very simply into four actual root causes, and then we're going to dive into each one of them. The first reason why your lead generation process isn't working for yourself is your strategy. The second most common root cause that your lead generation isn't working is your skill. The third, and these are not in any particular order, although I would say if I had to rank them, they would probably be in reverse order here. But the first is strategy. The second is your skill level. The third is the effort you're putting in place. And the fourth is your mindset. We're going to dive into these four actual root causes so that you can pinpoint what is the cause for your own underperforming pipeline so you can diagnose that and then you can address the thing that is actually the problem, not what you think the problem might be, kind of off the cuff. We're sitting down to really figure out what is your actual cause of your underperforming pipeline so that you can address it. And it might be some combination of all of these things. And we'll talk at the end about how to rank them so that you can start tackling them one by one. Okay, strategy. Let's start here. Strategy. What is strategy? You know this, but I'll just say it so you're all on the same page. It's a deliberate, repeatable plan for attracting the right prospects into your business through targeted actions like networking, speaking, attending events, outreach, content, referrals. Those are examples of a strategy. Typically, the issue that I find is not that you have the wrong strategy. Let me say that again. Typically, the issue is not that you have the wrong strategy. Occasionally that's true, but almost always what I hear from consultants is, I'm worried I'm doing the wrong thing, or I'm worried that this isn't working for my target market. Typically, the issue is not that you have the wrong strategy. This is actually a very simple business model. It's a relationship based business model. So, how do you build relationships? It's through these simple things, right? Networking, speaking, events, outreach, content, referrals. It's very old school in that way. You don't need to be a good online marketer. You don't need to be good at running ads. None of that even applies to this type of business model most of the time. So typically, the issue is not that you have the wrong strategy. The truth is, the actual root cause is that you don't have a strategy. That's the truth. Do you even have a strategy? And you might kind of wave your hands and tell me right now, talking back to the podcast, well, yeah, I do have a strategy. It's this, this, and this. But do you actually have a strategy? Do you have two pillar lead gen approaches, for example, like networking and thought leadership that have numbers against them? If I do this amount, I believe it will result in this amount in my pipeline. That would be a strategy. So when you start thinking about the root cause of why your pipeline is underperforming, ask yourself, do you have a solid strategy in place that you are able to implement and test against to figure out if the strategy is working or not? For most consultants, the answer is no here. So rather than worrying about, I don't have time, this is hard, I'm not good at it, we're working on the first root cause, which is, oh, I don't actually have a strategy. This is incredibly important to evaluate. Figure out, do I have a strategy? Is it detailed enough? And if you don't, then start addressing that first root cause. Okay, let's move on to skills. So once you know what your strategy is, if you don't know what your strategy is, you don't even know what skills you need. So this speaks to this idea of, well, I'm not good at it. Well, we don't even know what it is if you don't have a strategy. So the first thing you need is the strategy. What is it you're going to do to generate leads? The strategy. Now, what skills do you need to execute that strategy? The skills are those learned abilities that allow you to consistently attract and engage potential clients. Notice I said learned abilities, not abilities you're born with. These are learned abilities over time. This is not you either have it or you don't have it. These are skill sets that you build over time. If you've ever heard me talk about this on the podcast, I'll repeat it again because it is so relevant here. When I was in corporate, working as an executive at a tech startup, the CEO would refer to me as sales repellent. I share this because in some ways I was sales repellent because I was the one in the room as a subject matter expert, like wanting to tell the truth of what actually was available and what wasn't, and what we were going to do and what we weren't. And the salespeople would prefer to tell the client, those prospects, what they wanted to hear, and then have us in operations and delivery figure out how to do it after the fact. That was the tension, right? So in a lot of ways, I was a sales repellent, although to defend myself, I also built a lot of trust with those potential clients. But anyway, that's a story for another day. The point is, that was a label attached to me, right? Sales repellent. I thought of myself as someone who was bad at sales, who was bad at marketing. I thought marketing was a ridiculous endeavor, to be honest with you, when I was in corporate. I was wrong about that. And I figured out since and taught myself and used leverage coaches and courses and training and a lot of trial and error. And I get a lot of feedback when I talk to consultants who tell me like, the systems that I've built and the content that I create is really valuable to them, which would be a testament to I built up, it's been a learned ability to figure out how to market and sell. You can do this. If I'm starting off as sales repellent and getting myself to a place where I'm decent at it, some would say good at it. I don't consider myself an expert, but I consider myself someone who's figured out how to do this. And I like it now where I used to hate it. You can do this too. It's a skill that you build. And so the truth is not that you have it or don't have it. The truth is that you haven't been focused on skill building. Now, I'm not saying you haven't done anything. Of course, I'm sure you've been doing some work around this area. But if you're still in the place where you don't feel like you're good at this, or you're in the place where you're not seeing the results that you're wanting to see, it's so important to look at what is your strategy and then what skills do you need that map to that strategy and where do you have opportunity for growth in this area? What skills are needed for your lead gen strategy? And then rate each of those skills on a scale of 1 to 10. And for the ones that are important and underdeveloped, start building them. You can figure this out. But when you go around thinking that you're bad at it or you don't want to be too salesy, then you just block yourself from, digging in and starting to create this skill set for yourself. Now, I told you at the end I would tell you a couple of tools that I've, available to you to help you with this. But rather than waiting, I'll tell you right now, I've built a scorecard to help you figure out and assess these four areas. So the first is obviously the strategy, the second is the skill set. So you can go to pipelinescorecard.com, and assess yourself with respect to the strategy, the skill, and these next two sections we're going to talk about. Okay, I gave you a little hint here. Okay, but the skills are really important. And don't tell yourself that you're not capable of building them, because you are. You're a consultant. You do a lot of this and not even realize how much parallel there is between the way you work with your clients and the skill set that is necessary for you to build a pipeline. There's more overlap than you might be realizing. And so give yourself credit for that and figure out what are the skills that you need, and then start tackling them one by one. That scorecard will help you get further in that direction. Okay, the third root cause of your underperforming pipeline is effort. This is just the honest truth. Effort are the focused activities that keep your pipeline flowing. That's the definition, right? Focused activities that keep your consulting pipeline flowing. The truth is, most of us are not putting in as much effort as necessary to build a pipeline. And the amount of effort varies over time. If your pipeline's empty, it's going to take more effort to fill it. If you've got a repeatable process that you understand the numbers, if I do X, it will result in Y in my pipeline, then the effort you'll be able to ramp it up and down, right? But the truth is, for most consultants, at least so many that I talk to, is that we're not actually putting in as much effort as is required. That's the honest truth. You're making excuses when you think things and say things like, I don't have time, I'm too busy with client work. You're most likely saying this to yourself, right? Or I don't have the capacity right now for new clients, so it's not a good use of my time to be working on lead generation. Or I don't have capacity right now for new clients, so what would I even do with them if I was successful with lead generation? Like, those are the things that might be going through your head, and those are excuses. I say that to you with love, because when you're making those excuses, it just shuts you down from putting in the effort that's required to run a business. To address this root cause, you want to be treating your business as client number one. You want to be making the time. This is a priority. And you know that by seeing it in your calendar. It doesn't mean that you need to spend 5 hours a day working on lead generation, but it means that you see lead generation on your calendar, that you're executing and not skipping, or not moving the meeting with yourself, or not saying you'll do it next week and kicking the can down the road. It means that there is a consistent effort to build your pipeline, leveraging your strategy. It's very simple. It's not easy necessarily to do all the time, but it's very simple. And this is incredibly important, to be honest with yourself about assessing how much effort am I really putting into lead generation, and what are the excuses I'm making that are preventing me from putting in that effort. And they're not facts. It's not a fact that you don't have time. Even if you're working in the middle of an incredibly intense implementation, you do have time. It doesn't mean that you have 10 hours of time, but you have time to advance your lead generation by 30 minutes a week, even in that case. Most of us aren't in the middle of an intense implementation. We're in the middle of client work, but you have an hour a week. It's an excuse to say you don't have time. So the two things to address this are, number one, making the time, putting in an appointment with yourself that you would never skip, just like you wouldn't skip a client call, or you would skip only in the case of an extreme emergency. And then number two, having what I call the excess demand plan. That goes back to this idea of, well, I don't even need a new client right now, so why would I be doing lead generation? That's not the mindset of a business owner. That's the mindset of a doer. When you're running a business, you're always generating leads. You're always working on building your brand reputation, your personal brand. You're always working on creating that demand for yourself. And so having an excess demand plan rather than trying to time the demand perfectly or rather than trying to time your efforts to fill your pipeline just in time when you need the work or the engagements rather than doing all of those things, which are very, very challenging to get right, rather than doing all of that, make yourself an excess demand plan. So when you generate more demand than you can handle, which is an amazing problem to have, you know what to do it, you're going to do with it. That's in episode 190 if you want to go back to that concept, having an excess demand plan. Okay, so that's the root cause of effort and the couple of steps to address that situation so that you don't continuously create this root cause that drives an underperforming pipeline. Okay, the last one, mindset. And honestly, I would say to you is probably the first one from almost all of us, even before strategy, to be honest with you, because if we're not in an effective mindset, and we're not talking about positive thinking here, we're talking about an effective, aligned mindset to set up your strategy, to understand that you've got some skill building and that's not a problem. It's possible. And that the effort is important and necessary and critical to be consistent. All of that is driven off of a mindset. So the mindset is your set of beliefs and attitudes that shape how you approach creating new client opportunities. This is your lead gen mindset. An ineffective mindset sounds like I'm bad at lead generation. It won't work for me. I can't stay consistent. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be salesy. This isn't sustainable. A lot of those things sound like you're just reporting the way it is, but that's not the case. These are thought processes that you have that are holding you back from being successful as a business owner. Your mindset is something that you can control. And it's incredibly important to do so because when you go at this process that we've been talking about today of addressing the root causes of your underperforming pipeline, when you go at this, in the headspace of it won't work for me, or I'm bad at it, or I don't want to be salesy, or this isn't sustainable, or I hate this, but I'll do it anyway, that dilutes the impact and makes it really challenging for you to have a sustainable process when you're constantly fighting against yourself in your head, right? This is incredibly important to address. This is not a fixed or genetic thing, the way you think, or just these facts. You could tell me all of these things and show me tons of proof for them. But the opposite is also true. I know there are ways right now, before you even build any skills, that you are not bad at lead generation. I'm not going to try to get you to make the leap that you're great at lead generation, but it's possible that you're decent at lead generation. If you've landed a client before, you're good at lead generation, or you've been good at lead generation. Like getting yourself into the headspace of, I can figure this out. I'm not amazing at it, but I've got some foundational skills that will help me to be good at lead generation. Like shifting your mindset so it's not such a blocker for you, or it won't work for me, or I can't stay consistent. Like figuring out what it is that you're thinking that is creating blocks for you. Because quite frankly, let's take it this way. If you thought that your lead generation efforts would be successful, if you thought that if you just focused on, executing lead generation consistently, that you would have a healthy pipeline, you would have more clients than you could handle, doing work that you love doing, priced at a level that feels amazing to you and aligned to your revenue goals, you would go do the lead generation. When you're coming at this from, I'm bad at this, it's not going to work, I don't want to be pushy, this is hard, of course it creates friction for yourself. And of course it makes more sense to go do the things you feel better at, which is client delivery. So that's why it's so important to address the mindset side of this as one of the root causes why your lead generation process isn't working. Addressing the mindset is not a nice to have. Addressing the mindset is something that's possible to shift. It's not set in stone the way you think or these things that feel factual. but it takes work and intention. You can change your mindset. It's not genetic or fixed. And it's imperative to change the mindset because these other things like the strategy and the skills and the effort are all fueled from your mindset. So, what does this mean actually? How do you start addressing this root cause? It starts with awareness. What are you thinking? Getting really clear with yourself. Spend 5 minutes every day asking yourself, what are you thinking when it comes to lead generation about yourself, about your target market, about your ability, about your process? Just doing a thought download, a brain dump. What are all the ways that you're thinking about this? And look at them and ask yourself for each one of them, how is this not true? You have to start realizing so many things we think are just true or reasonable or this is the way the world works are actually not the truth. And so starting to unlock that for yourself, the awareness is the first piece of the mindset shift. And then the second is rebuilding a mindset that is aligned to the goals that you have and the ability to generate and keep a consistent, healthy pipeline. So that is the number 4. Again, these are not in a ranked order, but the fourth the fourth root cause for you if you have an underperforming pipeline, which quite frankly, most consultants do. You're not alone, my friend. So many of us have this problem. And it's something that's incredibly important to address if you want to have a business. And you do because you're here. So this is so important to address. So as we wrap up today's episode and think about those 4 root causes, I already gave you a hint, but here are the 2 ways you can start addressing this, putting what we just talked about into action. And the first is go take that consultant's lead generation scorecard. I haven't created a new scorecard in a long time. As you probably know, I have several of them out there. One is more about the overall business health. And there's another popular one is about pricing. But this assessment, this scorecard is very specific to your lead generation process. And it really dives in deeper to these 4 root causes and helps you to identify and rank the scores on these 4 areas and specifics within the 4 areas so you can start to figure out what to tackle first. So that's number 1. I would go take that lead gen scorecard. It's at www.pipelinescorecard.com. And then secondarily, you may have heard this last week, but I am hosting a consultants pipeline sprint. So it's going to be a group of us. We're coming together. We're executing a 6-week sprint starting on September 23rd. That is a Tuesday. We're executing a consultants pipeline sprint. For 6 weeks, we're focused on sprinting to fill your pipeline. If your pipeline is empty and you have no current client work, the amount of activity you're going to be doing is going to be kind of at the highest level so we can fill your pipeline and help you to land a client by the end of the year and start off 2026 strong. If you've already got client work and you know that you want to jumpstart your pipeline and jumpstart your process too, so that you've got a more consistent one and address some of these root causes, then come join us as well. You'll execute the pipeline sprint in a way that matches up to your availability. You don't need to stop any client work to fill your pipeline. We want to build a process that works in conjunction with delivery. That's the way that your business model works. So whether you've got no clients or some clients or feel really busy and that you don't have a lot of time, this process will work for you because we want to put a concerted effort into generating leads, getting and fine-tuning and optimizing a consistent lead gen process for you and have you finish out the year strong and start off 2026 in a really solid place for yourself. So if you're interested in doing this process together with a group of other consultants led by me, you can go to icaccelerator.com, IC for independent consultant, accelerator.com, and find all the details and sign up. Thank you for tuning in this week, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.